Hello guys and welcome back to the channel. So in today's episode I have a full care guide for the very popular jade plant. I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about watering, lighting, fertilizer, pests to make sure that you have a very happy and healthy jade plant within your house. So I have 3 jade plants within my collection. I've got this guy here, it's a medium-sized jade plant really. It's not the biggest in the world, but 2 main stems. And I've got this one, slightly smaller, lives in my bedroom. And then from this guy, I actually propagated and got this guy. So jade plants are a type of succulent native to South Africa. So being a succulent, they're very specific care requirements to make sure that you have a happy and healthy plant. I follow these basic principles and that's why my jade plants are looking healthy and they grow at the appropriate rate. Jade plants can grow to be quite large. They are a tree, but they are slow growing. So that means that they only tend to grow about 2 or 3, maybe 4 inches a year. If your jade plant is growing any less than that, then you may have some problems. Jade plants are generally an unfussy plant and fairly easy to grow, so long as you follow the following basic principles. So the first thing we need to talk about is lighting. So jade plants are unlike your typical house plant in your house in that they require full sun. So you often hear me say on this channel that house plants need indirect light. Don't put them in direct light. This is different to a jade plant. They are a succulent, so that means that they require full sun for them to grow the 2, 3, 4 inches per year. If you don't have them in enough light, if you have them in indirect light, then they tend to get a little bit leggy. They tend to search for the sun, and that means that the gap in between each of the leaf nodes is a little bit long, so the stems get a little bit stretched out. If you have a jade plant where the stems have long gaps in between each of the leaf nodes, then it's not getting enough light. So that means all you need to do is just shift it to preferably a south-facing position within your house. Jades that are not getting enough light, enough direct sunlight, tend to be stunted in their growth. So instead of growing the 3 or 4 inches per year, then they may only grow 1 or 2 inches, which would be a bit slow. So in that case, you just want to shift it to a brighter location, preferably in a south-facing position. If you don't have a south-facing position, then west-facing, so it gets afternoon sun. Jade plants, like most succulents, store their water in their thick leaves. So that means that they don't require too much watering. You can normally tell when a jade plant is thirsty just by looking at the leaves. So you just want to feel the leaves. And if they're feeling a bit saggy, a bit limp, a bit thin, then that normally means that they're thirsty. They should be nice and plump. This guy here is a little bit thirsty. I've not watered it in a while. It's feeling a little bit thin, a little bit saggy. So this needs a top up. It's a good idea just to check the leaves on your jade plants for if you think it's thirsty. If you have been underwatering your plant, then all you need to do is just give it a bit of water, maybe increase the watering schedule. It will respond by the leaves plumping up, it will look shinier, it will look happier. The bigger risk is with overwatering the plant. So like I say, the leaves store the water for the plant. So if you have a consistently wet or damp soil that the plant is living in, that means that the roots are going to draw up too much moisture, the leaves are going to hold too much moisture, and they're going to begin to go a bit mushy. So we want to prevent this. So to do that, we just need to temper our watering, not water too often. I water my jade plants probably every 2 or 3 weeks in the summer, and I dial that back down to once every maybe 5 weeks in the winter. So you just want to make sure that you're letting the soil dry out in between waterings. You want it to be thoroughly dry. Give it some water and then that should be fine. If you find that you are overwatering your plant, then like I say, the leaves will start to go a bit mushy and it could lead to leaf drop. In that case, all you want to do is just take it out of the pot that it's in, remove all the damp soil, and then repot it into a drier mix. If you're really unsure about how often you should be watering your jade plant, then it's always a good idea to invest in a moisture meter. This will tell you exactly how dry the soil of the jade plant is, and that totally takes care of the risk of overwatering or underwatering your plant. You can pick these up from Amazon for about £10, and I found them to be a real lifesaver. With regards to soil, then a jade plant does require a really well draining soil to kind of prevent the risk of overwatering your plant. If you keep your plant in, say, just compost with no kind of additives to lighten the soil, then the chances are that soil mix is going to hold on to too much moisture, and then that's going to lead to you overwatering the plants. You can buy a specific succulent mix, probably from your local nursery or your local big box store, or you can go about making your own. So I make mine with just potting soil, and I add lots of perlite, about 50% perlite, 50% potting soil. You might want to chuck in some bark as well to really aid the drainage, a really chunky mix, and you'll find that that is a much better mix than just having compost. Another sensible idea with regards to your soil and what you put it in is to keep your plant in a terracotta pot. So if you find that you tend to overwater your plants and you feel that you might struggle with that with your jade plants, then I would pot it directly into a terracotta pot. And the reason for this is that a terracotta pot kind of wicks moisture from all around it basically. So it basically dries out the soil much quicker than if you have the plant in a plastic nursery pot. I use a balanced fertilizer for my jade plants like I do with my other house plants. You want to make sure that you're giving your jades fertilizer probably once a month just to give it a pop, make the leaves really shine and plump up. So it's a good idea for the plant's health. If you're not fertilizing your plant enough, then the plant's not going to be getting enough nutrients, it's not going to be getting enough nitrogen, and therefore it may start to look a bit faded, and you won't get the desired look of your plant. Try not to over fertilize your plant, and that means not fertilizing more than once per month. So if you fertilize a little bit too regularly, a bit too often, then the leaves of the jade plant may start to turn yellow as it's taking on too much nutrients from the fertilizer, and eventually that will probably lead to leaf drop. So it really won't be healthy for the plant. If you do find that you are over fertilizing your plant and you're starting to see yellow leaves, then the best thing to do is to take it out of its soil, remove as much soil as possible, give the roots a thorough watering, spray it down with a hose, and then pot it into a nice fresh potting mix. Jade plants are a succulent and they're native to South Africa, so they don't really tolerate long periods of cold. So definitely don't be keeping your jade plant in a cold location in the winter. That's not really going to help it. If you do find that your jade plants are in a cold location, then this will really stunt the growth of the plant. Jade plants are generally fine in your general house humidity. During the winter with the central heating on, mine are doing fine. They're not shriveling up or anything. I don't have a humidifier for my plants in my house, so just keep your plants normally in your house as you would other plants and they should do fine. It's a good idea to check the roots of your jade plant, probably at least annually, maybe every 6 months, just to make sure that the plant isn't root bound in the pot that it's in. The first sign that the plant is root bound is normally if you lift up the plant and check the underneath. If there's loads of roots coming out of the bottom of the plant, then that's a sign that there's too many roots for the plant. In that case, you'd want to take the plant out of the pot and just give the roots an inspection to see whether the plant is root bound. If you find that the plant is root bound, then you might notice that the roots are circling around the top of the soil, circling around the stems of the plant. That's not really healthy because that tends to choke the plant. That's not good for its health. In that case, you just want to untangle the roots carefully just to stop it circling around, and then just put it into a pot that's one size bigger than the pot it's in with some nice fresh soil. If you do allow your plant to get root bound in the pot that it's in, then this is going to seriously inhibit the growth of the plant. You'll also notice that the plant becomes a little bit more thirsty than normal. This is because there's too many roots for the pot and there's not enough soil to hold on to the moisture when you come to water it. So you're just pouring water over the roots, there's no moisture to hold on to it, so it just requires topping up the water much more frequently. You can propagate a jade plant quite easily through stem or leaf cuttings. It's much quicker to do it by stem cutting than leaf cuttings, but leaf cuttings is an option. Generally much slower, probably take maybe 1-2 years for it to start to develop into some form of small plant. Whereas with a stem cutting, it's much more quicker. So this guy, like I say, this is a cutting that I took from this plant, and it was only probably yay high last year, maybe a year ago. So it's put on this new growth within a year, so much quicker. I have done it with leaf cuttings and I've got 2 of them growing, but they really are tiny, so it's a much slower process. With a stem cutting, basically all you want to be doing is taking a cut or cutting the stem underneath a leaf node removing the lower leaves so they're not sat in the wet soil and then turn into rot. And then the stem should start to develop roots underneath the leaf node, and then from there a new plant will sprout. I'll be doing a video on how to propagate a jade plant. I'll be showing you the full process and I'll be showing you the results of my propagation. So do subscribe to the channel if you want to be notified when that comes out. Jades respond really well to pruning. If you're worried that if you take a cut of the stem, then that's it, it's not going to grow anymore, then that is contrary to what's actually going to happen. Like I say, with this guy, I took a few cuttings and you can just see where I took the cuttings at the base there. It's just where the wood starts to turn green. That's where I took the cuts. And then from there, both of these stems, in fact, 2 stems have sprouted on each side. But it's a good way of getting a bushier jade plant because it always tends to sprout at least 2 stems from where you cut it. Thankfully, I've not had too many issues with regards to pests with my jade plants. There's a slight issue on this one that I'll talk about in a second, but generally, as with all houseplants, the things you want to look out for are spider mites. You want to check the underside of the leaves or where the leaves meet the stem for any webbing. And you want to check for mealybugs, and you want to check for powdery mildew, especially in the winter, which is a fungus can set in and it can kind of create a white coating on the leaves of the plant. Aside from that, you might have fungus gnats in the soil, which is unlikely with a jade plant because you shouldn't be overwatering your plant. You should be allowing the soil to dry out thoroughly in between waterings. In that case, it's not really a happy environment for a fungus gnat to go into the soil and lay its eggs. It wants some moist soil for it to do so. I've got a video on how to deal with fungus gnats if you want to check that out in the description. So like I say, I've got a small potential issue with this plant, but I think it's an issue that's not too serious. You might notice on the leaves that there are these tiny white little spots. This is quite common with a jade plant, and it's to do with mineral buildup. I think it's excreting minerals through its leaves. And this normally happens if you're living in a hard water area, excretes the salts from the hard water. In that case, you can use distilled or filtered water to cure that. It's also might be drawing up too much minerals from the soil. I tend to bottom water my plants, so there's a tendency for salts and minerals to remain in the soil because I'm not washing away the minerals when I come to water, letting the water drain through the soil, in which case I think I'm going to have to repot the plant in some nice fresh potting mix. There might also be a problem with overwatering and over-fertilizing the plants. Again, this is to do with salt buildups that it's excreting. So if you are overwatering, obviously you just want to cut that back and that should solve the problem. And if you're over fertilizing, then you want to cut back on the fertilizing and just repot your plant. Follow these steps, guys, and you'll have a happy and healthy jade plant. A really nice plant to have in your house, easy to propagate. Just make sure you keep it in a sunny location, preferably in a south-facing windowsill, and don't overwater it. They're the 2 main takeaways from this video. If you enjoyed the video, guys, then please hit the thumbs up. It really helps the channel grow. Let me know how you're getting on with your jade plant, whether it's looking healthy or not. If you have any issues, then please leave it in the comments section. Subscribe if you want to be notified when future videos like this come out. Like I said, I'm going to be doing a propagation video on this guy in the future. Thanks for watching as always, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you very much.